الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Dear brothers and sisters, first I want to apologize for being like 15 minutes late, so my apologies for that. I took the wrong exit. Even though every time I know the exit, but this time I made a mistake. And second, for today, inshallah, the agenda, we're going to start, inshallah, by talking about salah, prayer. And then, inshallah, we'll have some questions and answers. And then we're going to talk for the two sisters who are going to Hajj, inshallah. We're going to talk for 10 minutes about Hajj. So let's start with salah. Muslims did not have to perform salahs for 10 years. When the Prophet ﷺ, he received the revelation, for 10 years, all Muslims were asked to do is to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. 10 years. Until in the 10th year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam, on the night journey and ascension, al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. And first, before we get into salah, the word salah, what does it mean in Arabic? The word salah is coming from sila in Arabic, and sila means connection. So salah is the connection of the Muslim with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the relationship. And salah was a gift that was given to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam when he was at the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Mi'raj, in the ascension. The gift that he gave him to take back to all of us Muslims is the gift of salah. And because salah, it teaches us, first of all, as a Muslim, how do I know how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What gets me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Allah gave us the answer, and He said, it's the salah. That's what's going to get you closer to me, makes me happy with you as a Muslim, and make you successful in this life and the hereafter. What is the importance of prayer? If you read in the Quran, there is so many verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to do prayer. One of them says, وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي, and establish worship for my remembrance. So when you do salah, you're remembering Allah. And Allah said, حَافِظُوا عَلَى الصَّلَوَاتِ, guard strictly your prayers, the salah. Guard it strictly. It's very important. Protect it. Don't let it slip. Make sure you do it on time. And then, if you look at the salah, it is the first act of worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked the Muslims. And normally, the first thing you ask somebody is the most important thing. You start with the most important, then you go to the next, to the next, to the next. Allah started with the salah. So it's a message for us. This is the most important act of worship that Allah is expecting from us. Salah. More important than fasting, more important than Hajj, more important than Zakah. Salah is first. It doesn't mean the others are not important, but this is the most important one. And it is the only act of worship that was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. Directly. All act of worships, all other act of worships were ordered by Allah through Jibreel. Jibreel came down and gave the message to the Prophet ﷺ about fasting, about zakat, about Hajj. All other act of worship came from Jibreel, except salah. And this is something that we have to reflect on. Because if you think about it, if you're working in a company, and the president of the company wants something, if it's something regular, he may be sending an email, or even telling one of his vice president, go and tell such and such that I want this. If it's more important, then he's not going to ask his vice president. He may send the email directly to you. If it's very important, then the president is going to ask you to come to his office, and he's going to tell you, I want you to do this. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did. He brought the Prophet ﷺ to his presence and told him, do salah. He didn't tell him anything else. Salah. That's the only act of worship that Allah told us, because Muhammad ﷺ is our representative, and anything that Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ, He's telling to each one of us. So He told us directly, do the salah. And then, if you look at salah, it's the only act of worship that cannot be dropped. It cannot. If you're sick, you do salah. If you're traveling, you do salah. If anything, you're at war, in the middle of the war, you do salah. The only exception, go ahead.
Doesn't mean that you're going to say we could back to the salah, right?
I can't hear you.
If we go back to the salah, let's say we are stupid for any reason, right? Do we need to do it again? Make it up?
You skipped it?
Yes, pick it. Yeah, for whatever.
5 years or whatever? Or just one salah?
Just one or two times, for example, in a week. So,
You must do it and ask repentance from Allah and forgiveness. Because this is one of the things that must be done. It's not optional. There is only one exception for the salah. It's when women have their monthly period, and after giving birth, up to 40 days. That's the only exception. You don't have to make up for those. But other than that, you must make the salah. If you skipped it, you ask Allah, you repent to Allah, ask for forgiveness. It's the intention you're not going to do it again. And make it up. Whatever salah. If it's many years you skipped it, then make it easy. Every time you do dhuhr, make 2 dhuhr. One for today and one for the one that you skipped the last 5 years or whatever. You do asr, do it twice. But you have to make it up. It's not going to be dropped. And I'm going to cover that as well. Okay. And salah is the importance of salah. It's a constant reminder for us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say, make salah once a day. He didn't say, make salah, everything I want you to do at night, or in the morning, or in the middle of the day. He spread it 5 times during the day. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows we are weak and forgetting human beings. So He wants us to remember Allah all the time. If we do remember Allah 5 times a day, when you're going to be tempted to do something haram, the salah is going to tell you, and you're going to stand in front of Allah and do salah after that, skip it. If you're going to intend to do, you lied or something, when you get in front of Allah, you're going to ask Allah for forgiveness. I lied. Please, Allah, forgive me. So it's a constant reminder of the presence of Allah. And that helps us. Because if we do it like once a week, if only Allah told us to do Friday prayer and that's it, after Friday prayer, we're going to get busy at work, at home, and all of that. And by Saturday, we're going to start to forget completely about our religion. But Allah makes us remember it 5 times a day. And then prayer, one of the benefits of prayers removes our sins. So that's a beautiful thing. The Prophet ﷺ said, he was telling the companion, say, if they were a river at the door of one of you, in which he take a bath 5 times a day, would any dirt remain on him? So the companion said, no dirt will be left on him. He said, that is the example of the 5 obligatory prayers. Allah wipes away the sins by them. So every time you do salah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipe away your sins. The one that you did before. Every day. So on the day of judgment, there is nothing left on you except the sins that you did after doing the salah. So it's a beautiful opportunity to clean ourselves from our sins in this life. Because on the day of judgment, the cleaning is very hard. It's punishment and it's hellfire. And then the Prophet ﷺ told us, the first matter that the slave will be brought to account for on the day of judgment is the prayer. First thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you about. He's not going to ask you about how much money you did, what is your position in the company, who, your son of, who and who are your children. No, He's going to ask you about salah. That's the number one thing that He's going to ask you about. Did you do your salah? And that's why the sister that was saying, I skipped, is going to ask you about that. So you try to say, oh Allah, I skipped and I asked you for forgiveness and I repented and I made them up, so please accept them. But if you don't do them, what are you going to say in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's going to be a problem. And it's kind of interesting. I'll continue the hadith. So the hadith says, if it is sound, then the rest of his deeds will be sound. And if it is bad, then the rest of his deeds will be bad. So it's kind of interesting. If you look at it, this is the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask us about it. And some Muslims, it's the last thing on their mind. You ask them about what's important? My job. What's important? My money. What's important? My position. My kids. Anything. But then you tell them, what about salah? Oh, when I have time, I'll do it. What about that? Why didn't you go to Friday prayer? Oh, I was busy. Really, were you busy? Did you even try? No. But that's what Allah is expecting from us. And if it's not one of the important things on your mind, it's a problem. And then in the salah, the Prophet ﷺ said, a slave becomes nearer to his Lord when he is in prostration. So increase supplications in prostrations. When you're doing sujood, if you want to get very close to Allah, do sujood. If you want to ask Allah for something that's extremely important for you, make sujood and ask Allah in your sujood about what you want. You are the closest to Allah when you're doing sujood. So that's something that's very, for me, at least if I want to make dua, I always remember that when it's something difficult, when it's something important, I always remember that when I'm doing sujood. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was dying, normally when a person is dying, their last words is something that's very important. You hear somebody saying, when he's dying, take care of my kids. Do this, do that. The Prophet ﷺ, his last words when he was dying was, the prayer, the prayer, the prayer. His last word to his nation is remember as-salah. Because of its extreme importance. So he's telling us that. And the person, when you're doing salah, it elevates the status of the Muslim. It honors you. It increases your dignity. Because, think about it. I just want to give you an example. Let's say you are lucky enough that you're able to connect with Obama, President of the United States, and ask him for an appointment. He's going to tell you, somebody's going to call you. And then somebody will call you and say, what do you want? I want to meet with Mr. President. Tell me what you want to talk to him about. Oh, I want to ask him such and such and such and such. Then I'll get back to you. Then he's going to come back to you and say, okay, the president agreed to meet with you for 10 minutes. When? He's going to meet you in September 22nd. And you have to come to Washington, D.C., and you have to be here 1 hour before so we can frisk you and make sure you know you're clean, you don't have any weapons, and all of that. And then you're going to meet the president. And you walk in to the president. The 10 minutes start. At the end of 10 minutes, somebody will walk in and say, 10 minutes are up, the president has another appointment. Please, let's go. This is meeting a human being. With Allah, when you want to meet Allah, all you have to do is stand, face the Kaaba, and raise your hand, say, Allahu Akbar. You are meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't have to say, why do you want to meet with Allah? Allah is listening to you the minute you raise your hand to Allah and say, Allahu Akbar. He's listening to you. Whatever you want to say, how long do you want to say? You want to continue in the salah 15 minutes and talk to Allah, tell Him all your problems, Allah is listening. You want to make it 5 minutes, Allah is listening. You want to spend the whole night, Allah is listening. Nobody is going to cut you off, and nobody is going to distract Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from you. It's not going to be somebody else raising his hand so Allah has to listen to him. Allah is focusing on you and focusing on him and focusing on every other person. What kind of dignity that gives you? What kind of respect that gives you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then salah improves our character and morals, because it teaches us modesty and dignity. When you're standing in salah, the rich is standing next to the poor. We don't have the first row is for the rich and the poor stand in the back. We don't have that in Islam. All of us were standing next to each other. You wouldn't know which one is the millionaire and which one is on welfare. We wouldn't know. We're all standing.
Yes. And your president of Egypt, you will be the front row for salah.
It used to be. Now they sit next to the wall so nobody shoots them. I'm not kidding. I'm serious. I'm serious. But I'm telling you about what Islam is. What Islam is there is nobody. The first one who comes, sit in the first row. It depends on what is the first one who comes. It's not what is your position. If Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu came late, he would study at the last row. If he came early, he would be in the front. So it's not. We have to understand, never mix what's happening in Muslim countries with Islam. Those are two separate things. What's happening in Muslim countries today, in a lot of time, has nothing to do with Islam. Particularly what you see today, people saying fatwas that you can kill Muslims and it's halal and it's all those things. You see it on TV. What's happening in Iraq and happening in Syria and happening in all those countries. That's not Islam. So don't mix the two. In Islam, there is respect for every human being. And we're being humble by standing all in one row next to each other. Nobody, like, not the rich people are going to stand on carpet and the poor people are going to stand on bare floor. No, we're all the same. And then Islam teaches us sincerity and honesty. Why does it teach us honesty? If you think about it, who will know if you don't study? It's between you and Allah. If you don't study, nobody will know. Particularly in America, maybe in Muslim countries, your friend are going to say, hey, why you didn't come to the Jama? But here in America, nobody will care. And if you stand in doing the salah and you mumble anything, you don't say anything. You just keep thinking about your job and your work and and the sandwich that's waiting for you at home or whatever. Nothing. But it teaches you honesty. Because this is between you and Allah. And you're performing it to the best of your ability. Because that's the relationship you have with Allah. And it teaches us unity. We're standing next to each other, shoulder to shoulder. One group. We're not standing, this guy here, the other one at the end, and all of that. Unity. We're all next to each other. And then it gives us peace. When you sali, it makes your heart quiet. The Prophet ﷺ, whenever he had difficulty, he used to get up and do salah. Any problem he has a hard time solving, he gets up and do salah. It helps him relax and think better. And then obviously, today, if you listen about all the studies and all of that, they are telling you, if you do exercises every day for 20 minutes, That's the best thing for your health. And that's salah. It's a bonus we're getting. You do physical exercise when you do salah in addition to praying to Allah. Every part of your body is really stretched and moved and all of that. Even when you say Assalamu alaikum, your neck, you turn your neck left and right. So it's the bonus that we're getting from the salah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the salah is a key to solving your problem. Allah is saying, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah. O you who believe, seek help in patience and as-salah, and the prayer. So Allah is telling us, here is, I'm giving you a secret. If you need help with your job, with your family, with your wealth, with anything, with your health, go to salah. That's one of the keys to help you and achieve what you want. It's going to help you. How it's going to help you? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, but it will help you. And obviously salah will save us from sins and evil. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. And establish prayer. For prayer restrains from al-fahsha. Fahsha means the great sins, like killing, adultery, all the great sins, the major sins. And al-munkar, which is every evil deed. So salah is going to help you to stay away from that. And there was a young Muslim at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And that person, he was known for doing all kind of sinful things and corrupt deeds. He was bad. And they went to the Prophet and told him that this person is doing all those bad things, and he comes to the salah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, a day shall come when his prayers shall refrain him from committing sins. And in a very short time, that person repented and became an excellent Muslim. So salah eventually is going to guide you to doing good and become a good Muslim. But don't say because I'm doing evil, Allah's not going to accept my salah. Continue with your salah. Even if you're doing all kind of sins, Allah inshallah is going to make the salah guide you to what's good for you. And I want to say that in particular for if you have a person that you know that's not doing salah, a friend, a relative, or whatever, don't criticize them, encourage them. I've seen people when they see somebody who's not doing salah, they just come hard on him to the point that the person say, I will not sali. They get so mad, they don't want to do salah. No, that's not Islam. Islam is kindness. So you encourage them. You say, you can tell him, don't you see Allah is blessing you with a lot of things? He gave you a good job. He gave you a good family. Shouldn't you be thankful to Allah? Why don't you try to pray? Even start with one prayer and try. But be supportive, not critical and criticizing people. Now let's talk about some of the rules and etiquettes in salah, the good manners. What should we do in salah? Some of the rules of salah is, first of all, cleanliness of the body. Your body has to be clean. If you had an intimate relationship with your spouse, then you need to take a bath. And if you're okay with that, then in that case, if you did not do wudu, you have to do wudu, ablution. So you have to do wudu before salah. That's a must, it's a rule. And then your clothes have to be clean. You cannot wear clothes that has anything like urine, filth, anything like that. You cannot. It has to be clean. And you should cover what is called the awrah, which is your private part, should be covered. That's a rule in salah. Any of those, if you skip it, then your salah is not accepted. And the place of prayer has to be clean. Wherever you're going to put your head has to be clean. And you have to make sure that whatever prayer you're doing, that the time for that prayer is now, it's begun. So you don't say, let me get up now and Sali Maghrib. No, it didn't begin. But when you know that it began, then yes, you can do the salah at the maghrib. So you have to make sure that whatever you're praying, that time began. And then you have to be facing the qibla, facing the direction of Mecca. You have to do that. You have to do it to the best of your ability. If for sake of discussion you're in the desert, you don't know what to do your best guess and do salah. It's accepted. But if you're somewhere and you know what is the qibla, then you have to face the qibla in your salah. And the last thing is intention. Salah without intention doesn't work. Because when you do salah, if you pray 4 rak'ahs, is that dhuhr? Is that asr? Is that isha? Is that voluntary 4 rak'ahs? Islam is the only religion that built on intention. Everything is around intention. So you have to have the intention. And then when you do ablution, when you do wudu, Allah is telling us in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. O you who believe, when you prepare for prayer, wash your faces and your hands to the elbows, rub your heads with water, and wash your feet to the ankles. And ablution has certain rules as well that you have to follow. Otherwise, in that case, the ablution is not valid. The first one is you have to have intention that you're doing ablution. Because what's the difference between you were working in the backyard and you're coming to clean yourself, and versus the intention that you're doing ablution for salah? And I want to make sure that people understand. In Islam, intention is not something that you have to recite. It's something in your heart. You don't have to stand up and say a long speech that I'm intending to do such and such and such. It's in your heart. As long as in your heart, that's your intention. That's all that's expected from you. And then you have to wash your face. And the next one, you have to wash your arms to the elbow. The next one, you have to wipe your head. The next one, you have to wash your feet and the heels. And the last thing, it has to be in that sequence. In that sequence exactly. You cannot start with your feet and then go to the face and then jump to the hands. No. It has to be in that order. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to do. However, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, his sunnah, he added more things to us. If you don't have those 6, you don't have wudu. But if you do the additional sunnah, you get extra reward. And if you skip one of them, it's fine. Still your wudu is fine. Like the Prophet ﷺ add rinsing your mouth, blowing your nose with water. So all those things have been added by the Prophet ﷺ. Washing your ears. And another thing is the Prophet ﷺ, he was passing by one of the companions. His name is Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. And Sa'd ibn Mu'adh was performing ablution next to the river. So the Prophet ﷺ looked at him and he said, "What is that waste, Sa'd?" So Sa'd looked at him shocked and he said, "Is there waste in water?" So the Prophet said, "Yes, even if you are at a flowing river." So one of the things as a Muslim, Muslims are not wasteful. So we don't waste water even if you have plenty of it. Some people have noticed when they do wudu, they open the faucet all the way and the water is splashing all over the place. You need 4 people to clean the place after them. That's not Islam. Islam uses as little water as you can, even if you have plenty. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, "Ya bani Adam, khudhu zinatakum 'inda kulli masjid." O children of Adam, make yourself beautiful at every place of prayer. So when you're doing salah, wear nice clothes. Allah didn't say wear your best clothes, but wear nice clothes. So you look nice. You're standing in front of Allah. If you're going to meet somebody important, you're going to go and wear the best clothes you have. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering Muslim, if you ate food that has garlic or onion, don't go to the masjid. That's order. Because you're going to offend the other people around you. When you go to the masjid, you should put perfume, cologne, whatever makes you smell good. So The people around you are not offended. They are feeling good that you're around them. But if you smell bad, you should not do that. So you should, in that case, as a Muslim, anywhere, anytime you do go to prayer or start prayer, your clothes should be clean, your breath should be nice, and you should look clean. When you go to the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, he who purifies himself, do wudu, in his house, and then walks to one of the houses of Allah for performing an obligatory salah, one step will wipe out his sins, and another step will elevate his rank in Jannah. Just imagine that. Every step you're taking when you're going to the masjid, one step is erasing your sin, one step is raising your rank in Jannah. And then I notice sometimes people, when they have to park a little bit far from the masjid, they are so irritated. Come on, this is a blessing, this is a tremendous reward. You should not be unhappy. As a matter of fact, you should park at the end and come walking.
Yes.
It's tremendous opportunity. But they are so irritated. And they complain after that, they say, parking was horrible. Why? Because I parked too far a little bit. Come on. This is a blessing from Allah. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who gets the greatest reward for a prayer is the one who walks the farthest distance. The farthest distance. That's the one who gets the greatest reward. And then when you get into the masjid, one of the companions, his name was Abu Qatada, he said, we were praying with the Prophet ﷺ when we heard a loud noise from some men. So when the prayer finished, the Prophet ﷺ turned and he said, what was the matter with you? So the people answered, they said, we were hurrying for the salah. So the Prophet, he said, do not do that. When you come to the salah, come in peace and calm. And pray what you can with the congregation, with the group. And complete what you have missed. And then he added, for one of you is walking for salah, he is in fact engaged in salah. So when you're walking, coming to the masjid, some people, you see them laughing and joking. That's a great opportunity for you to remember Allah. And that's one of the reasons, if you follow what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us, a lot of people tell me, when I do prayer, I can't concentrate. I'm always distracted. Because yes, you're walking all the way to the parking lot, to the door of the masjid, you're laughing, you're joking, all of that, then you walk in and you're going to do salah and you expect to concentrate 100%. Allah, the Prophet is telling us, you have to get in the mental position of being ready to stand in front of Allah. And you do that with wudu, you do that when walking, with calmness and all of that. Then when you stand in front of Allah, you're already mentally prepared to concentrate on your salah. And then when you're in the masjid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم. O you who believe, when you are told to make room in the assemblies, make room. Allah will give you ample room from His mercy. Some people, when they are in the masjid, it's very common that you see people sitting and he has half a space on his right and half a space on his left. Make room for other people. Allah is saying, if you make room for others, Allah is going to make room for you in His mercy. So move to the side, move to the left, whatever it takes. Make room for other people, even if you have to squeeze yourself. Wouldn't you like to get the mercy of Allah? So that's important, as to make room for other people. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, if people came to know the blessing of calling adhan and the standing in the first row, they could do nothing but would make a drawing to secure these privileges. The Prophet is telling us, coming early and being one of the people in the first row, there is great rewards for that. Great rewards. But remember what I said. I said, coming early. Because I've seen some people, they come late and they step over the shoulder of everybody because they want to sit in the front and squeeze everybody. It's not the sitting It's when you came to the masjid that's important. But obviously, if you came early, don't sit in the back. Go sit in the front. There is great reward. And when somebody is doing prayer, you have to respect their space when they're doing prayer. The Prophet ﷺ said, if the person who passes in front of a praying person realizes the enormity of the sinfulness of his act, it would have been better for him to wait 40 than to pass in front of him. When somebody is doing salah, there is a sacred area for that person. That sacred area is where he puts his head for sujood. Between his feet and that area is a sacred area. You don't cross in that area. Walk around him. Walk around him. The Prophet is saying it's a great sinful act. Walk around him. Don't cross in front of somebody doing salah. I've noticed some people, they go to extremes. Somebody is doing salah and he's at the end of the room and they don't want to pass here. No. The sacred area is for the person between his feet and where he's going to put his head for sujood. That's a sacred area. After that, you can pass. Behind him, you can pass. When we're standing for salah, a lot of people have noticed in Friday prayer, when they come in for Friday prayer, they sit to listen to the khatib, particularly if the khatib is standing and giving the khutbah. They sit. A person came when the Prophet ﷺ was giving khutbah. And he did exactly that. He walked in and he sat down. The Prophet ﷺ interrupted his khutbah and he said, get up and do 2 rak'ahs. 2 rak'ahs, it's voluntary prayer for respecting the masjid. It's a sunnah of the Prophet. Do those 2 rak'ahs and then sit down. But obviously, if the imam is giving khutbah, don't stand there and take half an hour to do 2 rak'ahs. Just 2 quick rak'ahs. You don't have to read Surah Al-Baqarah in the first one. So 2 quick rak'ahs and then sit and continue to listen to the imam. And the other thing is, those 2 rak'ahs or any other voluntary prayer are dropped as soon as people in the masjid make iqamah. That means they're announcing the beginning of the prayer. If they make iqamah, nothing to be prayed except what you're going to pray, whether it's the dhuhr, the asr, the maghrib. Those 2 rak'ahs are dropped once the iqamah is announced. And when they stand in rows, in Islam, imam should stand in the middle. And rows start behind the imam. The first person should be behind the imam. The next one on the right of the imam. The next one on the left of the imam. Right, left, right, left. That's the way in Islam the row should be. I've seen a lot of time in the masjid, you see a row that's all the row is on the left. Well, all the row is on the right. That's not the right way. I'm not saying it's haram, but it's not the proper etiquette. It's not the proper way of doing salah. You should have the row starting behind the imam and then to the right and left, right and left. And when you're standing in salah, you have to close the gaps. You don't leave gaps between you and the person standing. Some people don't like to touch other people. Not in salah. Like it. Shoulder to shoulder. And the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, arrange the rows in order. Stand shoulder to shoulder. Close the gaps. Be accommodating to your brothers. And do not leave gaps for Satan, for shaitan. Whoever joins up a row, he will be joined to Allah. And whoever cuts off a row, he will be cut off from Allah. What the Prophet is telling us is, if you're standing in a row and you see in front of you somebody moved up, and there is a gap, the first person that's going to step in and fill that gap, we're getting closer to Allah, to the mercy of Allah. And the person that sees somebody, oh, I saw my friend is in the back, I want to be next to him, so you get out of the row and go back to stand next to your friend, that's not right in Islam. That's not right. To move up to fill the gaps, yes, you will be close to Allah in His mercy and you'll be joining Allah's mercy. And in the salah, when you're standing, the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you are those whose shoulders are soft in prayer. So when you're standing, some people stand like, you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're just squeezing everybody around you. Be soft. If somebody squeezes you, fine. But be accommodating to people around you. And the last thing about Imam, when you're praying in somebody's home, nobody is allowed to be Imam except the man of the house. Even if you have the greatest sheikh coming, the greatest sheikh is there, only the man of the house has the right to be the Imam, except if the man of the house gives permission to somebody else to be Imam. But I've noticed it many times. There is somebody, a sheikh coming, and they go to somebody's house, and everybody tells, oh, sheikh, go be Imam. That's none of anybody's business. Only the man of the house has the right to tell that sheikh, please be Imam. And if he doesn't tell him, the sheikh has to pray behind him. If he doesn't give that authority. So only the man of the house, that's the beauty of Islam. Islam didn't leave anything that didn't cover. And how can you be in somebody's house, his kingdom, and you say somebody else is more important to you? Islam is very sensitive religion. How can you offend somebody in his home? So we don't have that. And then during the salah, you need to concentrate. Keep your eyes open. Except if it's going to be distracting for you. Like if you're saling and there is kids running around, you can close them. But the general rule, you should keep your eyes open. And then when you're doing salah, have your eyes looking and concentrating on where you are going to do sujood. The place of your sujood, your eyes should be focused on that. Not focus on looking around you, what's going on and who's coming and who's leaving. Oh, no, focus on the place of sujood. And you have to follow the orders of the Imam when you're doing salah. Not his motion. Because I've seen that many times. You have to wait until the Imam says, Allahu Akbar. Not that the Imam start bending, then you start bending. No. The motion starts with the Imam giving the order. If he gave the order and you went down, did sujood or whatever, and he's still up, you're fine. Because if you are focusing on the place of sujood, how do you see the Imam? If you see the Imam, that means you're not concentrating. You're watching the Imam. And your job is to listen, not to look. If he says Allahu Akbar, you do it. Then if he doesn't say it, then you wait until he says it. Even if he did sujood, you wait. And then when we do salah, the Prophet ﷺ told us, he said, then prostrate until you attain calmness in your prostration. Then rise and sit until you attain calmness in your sitting. And then prostrate until you gain calmness in your prostration. What the Prophet is telling us, when you pray, slow down. There is people who, when they do prayer, they do what I call the chicken prayer. If you look at the chicken when they eat, same thing. When they do sujood, their head barely touches the ground and up. And that's not what the Prophet ﷺ is saying. Don't do that. When you put your head, achieve calmness. And then you get up, calmness. Not, it's a race. Let me get rid of that salah. It's so boring. I just want to get over with it. No. Just be patient. Salli and concentrate. And when you do sujood, the Prophet ﷺ told us how to do sujood. He said, when a servant of Allah prostrates, 7 bodily parts prostrate with him. His face, his hand, his knees, and his feet, his toes. So if you notice, when you do sujood, your head has to touch the ground, and your nose, your hands. Some people put their arm on the ground. It's only your hands, not your whole arm. Only your hands. And then your knees and your feet, your toes. That's what's going to touch the ground. 7 parts should touch the ground when you're doing sujood. And if you're doing salah and the imam in front of you, it doesn't matter who he is. He is the guy that memorized the Quran 1,000,000 times. And he make a mistake. You correct him. You correct the imam. Some people feel embarrassed. Am I going to correct that great imam? Yes. The Prophet ﷺ was doing salah. And he made a mistake in Quran. And he turned around, after he finished, he turned around and Sayyidina Umar was behind him. And he asked him, didn't you know the right verse? And he said, yes. He said, why did you not correct me? The Prophet. And remember, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made him do that mistake so he can teach us. Because the Prophet does not forget or anything, but Allah make him make mistake so he can teach us. Because if he doesn't do any mistake, what should we do? How do we learn? If the Imam made a mistake in the Quran, now we know. If you're behind him and the Imam made a mistake, then correct him. And the same, if the Imam, when he's doing Salah, he made a mistake in the count. Instead of saling 4 rak'ahs, he salted 3, and he's going to say, Salamu alaikum. The people behind him, the men should say, Subhanallah, to remind him, so he will correct the mistake. For women, you clap. That's the way to bring his attention. So he can pay attention that he made a mistake, and then he can correct it. But that's a responsibility. Don't feel embarrassed. That's Islam. So don't feel embarrassed. And when you join a salah, if you came into the masjid and salah is already being performed, and you join people, let's say they are doing sujood. When you join them, the first thing you do is do takbirat al-ihram, the first takbirah. Say Allahu Akbar. And then you have to do the takbirah of the motion.